My name is Michael Thatcher, and I've been at Compass for just about a year. I didn't really grow up in the church. We didn't go very often. Mid-20s after college, I met this great Christian gal. We marry, and I determined that we're going to find a church. And one day, we found this little startup church. So I leaped into the opportunity, volunteered for everything. That led to seminary. That led to an offer of a staff position on the church. Unfortunately, after a period of another 3 or 4 years, I was burnt out. I was jaded. I was cynical. And so it came to sort of a head one day when I sat down with the senior pastor, and he said, "Looks like things aren't going well." We had a discussion that didn't go well, and he said, "It sounds like maybe you don't need to be here." And I said, "You're right." And so that day I walked out. I was hurt primarily because nobody came after me. 2 years later, I met a guy that I'd known in my ministry. We caught up and he said, we're starting a new church. I think you guys would love it. Well, the first Sunday that we walked through the door, I knew I had no business being there. I wrote it out as long as I could, but what little faith I had in the body of Christ was just being whittled away. That very night I went home, the doorbell rang about 7 o'clock. He handed me some papers. He said, "Michael Thatcher?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You've been served." The church, the senior pastor, and the elder board was being sued by a former church member. After about a month, the elder board was released on summary judgment from the lawsuit. And I remember walking down the steps. We got to the bottom and I shook their hands and I said, "Fellas, I'm done." I walked away from them and I made the decision I was just never going to go back to church. I was done with it. So I went and lived life thinking that I could somehow do that just with God and me. What I didn't realize is that during that period of time, I was drifting farther and farther away from the Lord. And with me, He had given me little signs over the years, but I wasn't having it, wasn't looking that direction. So finally, He decided that He needed to get my attention. And so He did that through a series of events. God just doesn't give up on His children. He just does not ever not pursue them and love them. And so I began to turn back towards Him very slowly. I put my house on the market. It sort of miraculously sold. I gave away most of my possessions, and I struck out to find a church somewhere in this world, not in the United States, where I could start over serving God. And I did that for about 18 months. Saw some amazing things, met some incredible people, but I didn't find what I was looking for. I didn't find that place. And every time I thought I would, God very clearly said, "This is not the place." He said, "You need to go back to Dallas-Fort Worth because that's where I most didn't want to end up." So I moved back here with the knowledge that not only was I moving back here, but that He expected me to have to re-engage on that 6-letter word that I had so run from all those years, and that was church. God, in His knowledge of me, used the pragmatism of Compass being the closest church to where I was living. So I started coming on Sunday mornings, but I knew as I sat here amongst all these people that this was, corporate worship's real important, and we have to do that, but this is not what God was calling me back to. He was calling me back to the body of Christ, to the brothers and sisters that I had hidden from and run from. So the next morning I'm up spending time with the Lord, praying about something completely unrelated, and this very strong voice inside me said, "Michael, get up, get dressed to go to church." So I got up, got dressed, drove over to Compass, not really having any idea why that Sunday was important. And after the first couple songs, a staff member came out and said, "Hey, it's the last Sunday to sign up for Rooted." Okay, so obviously that's why God had called me out of the apartment that morning. So I signed up for Rooted. So Rooted is so amazing because I couldn't tell you one thing it does or two things it does. I've seen God work in people's lives in a myriad of ways. I just am in awe of what God does. And that can't occur without people. It can't occur without Christians together. It can't occur in an auditorium. It can't occur from some guy running around the world trying to find God. 2 weeks later, I found myself in a room with a little Sunday school room over in Compass Center with a dozen people I'd never laid eyes on before in my life. And I remember thinking, I'm home. After 20 years on the road and running, I'm home. and I'm never going to leave home again.